Imagine starting a company with someone you don't trust, then spending years trying to buy them out. That's basically the story of Hulu. By the end of 2023, Disney agreed to pay Comcast at least $8.61 billion for Comcast's remaining one-third stake in Hulu. That's over $8,600 million for something Disney was already running. So here's the weird part. Disney controlled Hulu for years, but didn't fully own it. Imagine paying rent for a house while also choosing the furniture. How did two companies competing for your TV screen end up sharing the same streaming service? And why did it take years and billions of dollars to finally untangle it? Most people think Hulu is just Disney's smaller streaming app. You open it, watch a show, close it, and never think about who actually owns the business. That's understandable, because Disney has been running Hulu since 2019. The app even sits beside Disney Plus in many subscription bundles. But ownership and control are not always the same thing. Think of it like driving a friend's car every day, while they still own part of it. That strange setup made Hulu one of the most unusual businesses in streaming history. Honestly, it's like roommates who stop talking but still share the same kitchen. To understand why this happened, we have to go back before Disney Plus, before Netflix became huge, and before streaming took over Hollywood. Back in 2007, television companies had a problem. Millions of people were watching their shows illegally online. Instead of fighting each other first, several media companies decided to fight piracy together. Sometimes, your biggest enemy becomes your temporary teammate, so they created Hulu. The original owners included NBC Universal and News Corporation, with Disney joining soon after through ABC. At first, Hulu wasn't trying to replace television. It was trying to keep people watching TV shows legally, just on the internet. It worked surprisingly well. Viewers loved watching popular shows without hunting through random websites that looked like they'd also steal your homework. Then, streaming exploded. Suddenly, Hulu wasn't just protecting TV. It became incredibly valuable. Netflix proved people would actually pay every month to stream entertainment. That changed everything. Companies realized streaming wasn't just another business. It might become the future of television itself. Then, ownership started changing. Companies merged, bought each other, and traded assets like kids swapping trading cards. Except these cards were worth billions. One of the biggest changes happened in 2019. Disney bought most of 21st Century Fox for about $71 billion. That's $71,000 million. If you spent $1 million every single day, it would take almost 195 years to spend that much. That deal gave Disney an even larger share of Hulu. Suddenly, Disney owned about 2/3 of the company. Comcast still owned the remaining 1/3 through NBC Universal. So now the companies competing for streaming customers were business partners at the same time. That arrangement created a very awkward situation. Imagine opening a pizza shop with someone who's also trying to convince customers to eat somewhere else. Disney wanted Hulu to grow because it controlled the business. Comcast wanted to maximize the value of its ownership before eventually selling. In 2019, the two companies signed an agreement. Comcast would eventually sell its Hulu stake to Disney, but not immediately. The agreement guaranteed Hulu would be valued at least $27.5 billion when Comcast's share was sold. That minimum value protected Comcast from getting a low offer. 1/3 of that guaranteed value equals about $8.61 billion. That's why Disney had to pay at least that much, even before both sides finished arguing over Hulu's exact price. But here's where the story gets even stranger. Disney and Comcast couldn't even agree on what Hulu was actually worth. And that disagreement would lead to one of the biggest valuation fights in modern streaming history. The argument wasn't about whether Comcast would sell. Both companies had already agreed that would happen. The real fight was over one simple question. How much is Hulu actually worth? Disney believed Hulu should be valued one way. Comcast believed it was worth much more. When billions of dollars are on the table, even a small percentage difference can mean billions gained or lost. So instead of flipping a coin, which probably would have been cheaper, they followed the contract. Independent financial experts were brought in to calculate Hulu's value. Think of it like hiring two home appraisers because the buyer says your house is worth one price, but you insist it's worth much more. Valuing a streaming company isn't easy. You're trying to predict how many people will subscribe, how long they'll stay, and how much money they'll bring in over the years. It's basically educated guessing backed by mountains of data. Imagine trying to guess how popular a restaurant will be 5 years before it even opens. While that process dragged on, Disney kept running Hulu every single day. New shows were added, subscriptions kept coming in, and viewers barely noticed anything happening behind the scenes. Most customers had no idea the company behind their favorite shows was stuck in a billion-dollar ownership puzzle. Honestly, your TV was probably less stressed than the lawyers. Then another huge change arrived. Disney decided Hulu shouldn't stay separate forever. It wanted Hulu and Disney Plus to feel like one streaming experience. That made business sense. Instead of asking customers to jump between apps, Disney could keep them watching inside one larger entertainment ecosystem. The longer people stay inside your service, the less likely they are to cancel. That's important because keeping an existing customer is usually cheaper than finding a brand new one. Meanwhile, Comcast had different priorities. It was putting more energy into Peacock, its own streaming platform. Owning part of Hulu while building Peacock was a little like owning part of your neighbor's bakery while opening one across the street. Eventually, keeping that shared ownership stopped making strategic sense for either company. Disney wanted full control. Comcast wanted full payment. After months of negotiations and financial reviews, Disney officially completed the purchase of Comcast's Hulu stake in late 2023. That ended one of streaming's longest-running partnerships. Disney paid Comcast the guaranteed minimum of $8.61 billion right away, but the final amount could still change depending on the valuation process. In June 2025, the process finally ended. Disney agreed to pay Comcast an additional $438.7 million, bringing the total payment to about $9.05 billion for Comcast's one-third stake. That's almost $500 million more than the guaranteed minimum, enough money to buy hundreds of luxury homes or several professional sports teams, depending on the league. Once the deal was finished, Disney finally owned 100% of Hulu. After nearly 2 decades, there were no more shared decisions, no more ownership debates, and no more waiting. But here's the part that surprises most people. The strangest thing about Hulu wasn't the streaming service. It was the business strategy behind it. Companies don't always work with friends. Sometimes they work with competitors because making money together today can be smarter than fighting each other immediately. That's happened in other industries too. Car companies have shared factories. Airline competitors have shared routes. Even smartphone companies have bought parts from rivals. For example, Samsung has supplied display panels and memory chips used in several Apple devices over the years, even though the two companies compete fiercely in the smartphone market. Business competition isn't always about destroying your rival. Sometimes it's about making money with them first, then competing again tomorrow. Hulu became one of the best examples of that idea. A company built by competitors eventually became fully owned by just one of them. Most people only saw another streaming app. Behind the scenes, it was one of the biggest corporate balancing acts in modern entertainment. So the next time you open Hulu, remember that every episode you watch sits on top of nearly 20 years of negotiations, mergers, billion-dollar deals, and one very expensive business divorce. Streaming might look simple on your TV, but behind every play button is a story most people never hear. If you were running Disney, would you have paid over $9 billion to own the rest of Hulu? Or would you have spent that money somewhere else? Let me know your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your take. And if you enjoy uncovering the hidden business stories behind the world's biggest companies, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because there are plenty more surprising money stories hiding in plain sight.